listened to the wheel of his dog cart clink as he pulled the dog cart between its two traces across the frozen mud outside his village. In the dog cart was the frozen corpse of his wife. For 50 years he had loved her, but now she was gone. And so he was on his way into the village to ask the priest who had recently arrived, a lay priest, for a decent funeral. And so as he made his way into the village, he could see the frozen hoof marks of the Cossacks who had recently ridden through. But those hoof marks were just little skims of grayish ice, and the hoof marks made his corpse in the carriage bounce a bit. But he said, "I'm sorry, my love." At last he entered the little village, and he made his way to the finest house there. It was that of this new priest, and the old man left his wife in the ox cart, frozen in a fetal position, and walked through the gate and then up to the door and banged upon it. A moment passed, and then a tall, unsympathetic man opened it up and scowled. He was dressed in black robes, and the man asked, "Well, who are you? What do you want?" "Oh, little father, my wife says, Dad, I come to ask for a funeral for her, to lay her to rest with the sacraments." And funerals are expensive, old man. Do you have any money? "Oh, I don't have any money, but I will work for you, yes? I do not want you to work for me. Look at you, you're useless. Go away!" And the door was slammed in his face. Well, sadly, the old man went back to his wife and looked down at her. She was covered with frost. He still loved her so, and said, "My love, I will bury you myself. Come." And so he went with her back to his little sod hovel at the outskirts of the village. By now it was November, and almost all the fields were frozen, and he wondered if he would even be able to cut through the muddy ice to dig a grave. But he got his pick and his shovel, and he put them in the ox cart with his wife, and he made his way out into the fields. And last there he found what looked like a reasonable place, and so he took his pick, looked at the needles of ice coming up from the frozen mud, and cracked through it, lifted a big slab of frozen mud needles, and then another, put them upon their backs, and the old man began to dig. And hours passed until at last he had dug 6 feet down. One must dig a grave 6 feet for a reason. Anything less, and the body in the rains will float to the surface. And no one wants that. And so at last, with his final pick strike, he was about to make the perfect square when he hit something. "No, what's that? No!" His pick had struck something hard. "No, not the rock, not now." And he knelt down and brushed away the mud, but it was not a rock. It was old wood with bands of rusted iron across it. "What is this? What is this? What?" And he pulled it. Oh, and it was very small, but very heavy. Oh, and set it at the bottom of the grave. "What is this? Climbed out and looked at it. His wife was waiting patiently in the wheelbarrow, the dog cart, and he took one look at it and saw an old rusted lock upon the side, and with his pick struck it away and knelt down. And to his astonishment there, he saw inside it nuggets of gold. He immediately he knew one such nugget was enough to buy every house in the village. All the land, all the clothes, all the meager livestock, everything. And here he had a treasure trove filled with nuggets of such gold. Overjoyed, he looked at his wife and said, "My love, we are rich." "No, I'm rich, but I will buy you a funeral now." And so as fast as he could, he went back. He got one of the nuggets, and the rest he sequestered under his bed in the treasure trove, leaving his wife outside so she would not thaw as fast as he could. He ran back into the village with that one nugget of gold in his pocket. He ran through the gate and up to the door of the priest and banged upon it. And the priest opened it up and said, "I thought I told you to go away, old man." "Yes, but look. Gold." The priest stopped. "May I see that?" "Oh, yes." "Did I misjudge you earlier?" "Oh, of course I did. I was in a foul mood. Forgive me, please. Oh, what was it? A funeral?" "Yes." "Your wife?" "Oh, poor thing, she passed away. You need a funeral." "Why, we'll have a funeral." And so it was. The next day, a funeral such as had never been had in the village was set forth. All the villagers came. Upon table after table, long rows of chairs. There was black bread, great samovars of tea, borscht, huge meat pies. Everyone ate, everyone drank all the vodka in long rows of little glasses. And they all went out, at least most of them, and they stood there as in the cemetery. The priest laid the old man's wife to rest. And then they all came back and they ate every last scrap and drank every last dram. And then they left. And the old man, happy and a little drunk, was making his way home up toward the gate of the priest when he felt a touch on his shoulder. And the priest said, "Well, did you enjoy the funeral?" "Oh, yes." "So fine funeral, yes, she's so happy now." Yes, I'm sure she is. I couldn't help but wonder. People tell me that you're the most impoverished person in the village. So however did you come upon such... Oh, we spent it all, by the way, just the proper amount, nugget of gold. However did you come upon that? Just curious. Oh... I am rich. I found a whole treasure trove of such gold. I was digging, making a grave because you said you... That does not matter now. And I found a treasure trove full of such nuggets. I'm rich. And as he walked away, the priest looked at his back. Yes, you're rich. That night, across the table from his wife, with a tallow candle burning between them, the priest said, "Why, that old man has more gold than this entire village is worth. Do you realize if we could get it, we could move to St. Petersburg. We could buy a fine row house and have the finest things in the world. There must be a way to get it from him. Well, he's pious. Oh, do I dare do this?" Wife, go out into the garden, kill the goat, skin it, but leave its horns intact upon a piece of bone and bring that to me. Now the man's wife was terrified of him, and she said, "Husband, you cannot, just do as I say!" And so frightened, she ran out, and indeed she slaughtered the goat, and she brought the dripping skin in with the horns attached to it still upon a piece of flesh and skull at the top. He stripped off his shirt and said, "Good, sew it on me." "Husband, you just sew it on me!" And so with her hands trembling, she took needle and thread and she sewed down the side of his torso and down the other side and up toward his neck, and she secured the horns perfectly in place on top of his head. And as he stood up, she shrank away, for there in the firelight he looked to be the very image of the devil himself. And he said, "Good, pack our things. We're leaving for St. Petersburg. Pack our things, ready the carriage." And so as she ran off to do that, he crept out into the night and stole through the village to the old man's house. And the old man was saying his last prayers. He knelt at the side of his bed when suddenly he heard something rapping on his one glass window. "What is that? What is that?" And he looked, and there with the full moon behind it, he saw rising up a malevolent face with horns atop the head. And he said, "No, this house is sanctified, go away." But the thing outside his window said, "Give me back my gold, old man. I meant for you to have but one piece. You took my entire treasure trove. No, it's like, give it back and I'll come in and take it." This was too much for the old man. He got the chest of gold, threw it out his door, slammed his door closed, and dived beneath his bed and shivered in horror. While outside, the unscrupulous priest picked up the heavy chest and said, "And what?" And he ran as fast as he could back through the village. He burst open his door with his back, spun around and slammed the treasure down onto the table, making the candle jump. His wife was cowering there. "Good, cut it off and we'll go." "But husband, cut it off." So she took her scissors and she snipped one of the threads and, "Ow, what's he doing?" A little bit of blood came from the thread. "Don't, you jabbed me. I'm sorry, we'll cut someone else." And so she cut another one of the threads and, more blood spurted from the thread. "What are you doing? You're jabbing me." "No, husband." And she cut another one and, "No. And then another and another, but the more she cut, the more blood gushed from him, and then she started to pull at it, and she said, "Husband, it will not come off." "What do you mean it will not come off?" And he pulled, but everywhere it had touched his flesh, the skin of the goat had fused to it, and so he said, I'm sorry, I'll give it back. And as fast as he could, he ran back through the village with the horns bumping slightly a tilt on top of his head. He got to the old man's house, and he kicked open the door. The old man said, "No, go away. Oh, it's only me, you old fool." And the man threw the treasure trove down onto it, gold scattered across the mud floor. And then the man ran back as fast as he could to his home. He burst into the door and sat down. "Go down, cut it off. Not there. Try another spot. Not there. No. Yep, and so it was. The unscrupulous fool who dared to don the skin of the devil ended up